Now, the greatest idea of all time. Stay tuned for
From the Trenches of Hollywood.
Here are your guru guides from the A-list to the D and everything in between. It's Ted and Craig.
Hello and welcome to From the Trenches of Hollywood. I am Ted.
Hey everybody, it's Craig here. How you doing? Great to be back with you.
You been writing, man?
I have been, yep, a little bit.
Me too.
Kind of
I'm sure
it's, the holidays are coming up. This is the last show before we're going to go on a little hiatus for the holidays. So if you have been following along with us, you'll know you're in the middle of the holidays with us. If you're just joining us, who knows what time of the year it is. I hope you're enjoying the show. But
it's a great time to write no matter what time of year. So, I mean, that's good.
Anytime, any place, right?
That's right.
You can create.
Pen and paper. Yep.
You
Pen and paper, laptops, whatever. Sorry, I mean talk over you. But
always apologizing. Stop it. All right. So everybody, look, challenged you 2 hours a day or however many days a week you're committing to writing. And I hope that you've been able to stick with that 2 hours. And if you have, then you've been churning out pages. I anxious to hear from somebody. Send me some of your pages.
Don't be afraid. Don't think we're going to be critical or anything. This is this is something we want to enjoy.
Well, I understand
help.
Yeah, I understand a lot of you. It's funny because you'll send coded kind of queries because you're afraid that you don't want to give up your idea, right? And I get it. It's your idea. You want to protect it, so you should. But if you have advice, questions, or direction questions, we can definitely help with that. Remember, you can reach us at, of course, you see right under our faces here, these two handles at teddaviesartistry.com, my Instagram, Craig Hall E. Wood, and you can get us at From the Trenches of Hollywood at Facebook and Hollywood Trenches on Instagram. So plenty of ways to reach out to us and send in your questions. Look forward to them. And I look forward to hearing about what you're working on as well. So
absolutely.
Well, where you left off, let's just pick it up right where we left off last time. I felt like we ran out of time. We were at the starting the pages part. And that is like for you, tell us, when do you when you start, what is your situation then? We know how you like to free write and create in your your
environment.
Yes. That's we know about that. So what's the next step for you then? What are you doing?
So I'll write, get the moleskin out, the journal. I'll get my benchmark plan. If I take the 2 hours, I'm usually over 5 pages usually. And like, stream of consciousness writing of the story.
Okay. So wait a minute. What about when you take that, how do you deliver your final draft? Is it in this book or do you type?
No, it's all on my laptop. So I'll go through. It's actually a filtering editing. It's some people think it can be double work, but for me, I don't. It's just part of the process, and that's just how I do it. I've always it's almost like the pages that I write are a guide, and then as I get onto the computer and I'm writing, then it absolutely, like we were talking about a few weeks ago with our dear guest, the director, Ralph, he said that it just vomits out, and that's basically how it happens because I've already worked through a lot of the particulars. I'm like, oh, that's good. I can put that in there, and it's kind of like the finessing a little bit of it all once I hit the laptop. So, it's a real process when it comes down to it, but it works for me. It works for me. But 5 pages is usually what I'll go for in the 2 hours, and then I go right to the laptop within that 2 hour framework. I'm averaging about 4 hours a day, give or take. and that's exhausting for me. So, but that's what I do. I try to push myself to 4 hours on that.
So you are doing a first draft basically in your
Mhm,
book, handwritten,
mhm,
and then
mhm.
you are polishing it as you transcribe it. You
Correct.
are
Eh,
not necessarily going word for word from the
cor
moleskin
correct,
to
correct, correct. And then I've got a safety net too, because then I also, employ an editor on each of my books. So I think that it's outsourcing is important. I think that that type of collaboration is important. But I know my limitations on editing. Uh, and I think that it's important that you've got to have a good editor. You have to. You really do. Um,
Sure. Yeah, no
you know,
matter how much you catch yourself, uh, or spell check catches, or
yeah,
grammar check catches, or there's always something that slips by with me for sure. It's usually two
sure.
letters I've transposed like
Yeah.
from to form all of the time. The R
So
and O
easy.
for me all
So
of the
easy to
time.
do. Do you do now I type everything out. Do you do is it verbal? Do you have verbal
No.
to text or how do you yeah,
No, I do have that capability. I mean, like everyone does nowadays.
sure, sure.
It's even on Word. But I we may have talked about this already. So when I start, I
Mhm.
write. My outlines are usually in Word
Right.
because, and I'm usually that's my second outline because I've usually created a handwritten outline in a notebook somewhere. Then that's gone to an outline that I've created on Word that I
Mhm.
play with and adjust to where I think that I'm ready to start the pages. Then I've been working in Final Draft for many, many, many years. But I think we did talked about this, and Trebly is out there. I've worked in that
Yep.
one, but
Yep.
I'm ready to try something new. Actually, like Final Draft wants me to upgrade again, and oh my god, it's upgrading all the time. And
Oh, sure. Sure. Now is that a monthly subscription thing or is it how
no,
is it?
Final Draft is a purchase. You
Okay.
purchase the license and you have lifetime support with
Oh,
that
very
license.
good.
But the problem is it's not a lifetime program. Within 3 or 4 years, they end support on that one, and
Mm,
that's always in the clause. You have lifetime support until we end support on that particular
right.
version, because
Right.
we're not upgrading it anymore, and it's become obsolete, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
it
the rub.
happens.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, in their defense, I mean, they're trying to make money too. I'm sure on their, they're for profit company, and I'm
There
sure
is
that they,
no
you know,
lifetime anything
right,
anymore.
right. Well, yeah, what is lifetime warranty, right?
Yeah.
Um, well,
Uh,
that's interesting. That's an interesting thing that you're comfortable with the software though. You've been and it's different for novel writing versus what you're doing in scripting because you really have to have a type of filtering
well,
template software. You
a
know,
template.
yeah.
I've written
You know.
screenplays in Word
Mm,
and just created my own template within Word.
okay.
Set tab spacing for
Oh, okay.
characters, or for dialogue, or for transitions, and so that I could just, if it was a 4 tab hit, it went all the way over, and it was my transition, or a double tab would
Got it.
bring up the
Okay.
dialogue for character. Single was dialogue. None was just a slug line or action line. So you can create one pretty.
Hmm.
It might. So there's these little intricacies in these programs where
Sure.
they'll mess with a little bit of the spacing. Instead of it being double spaced here, it's 1 3/4 spacing,
Yes.
or I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
just
Sure.
all right. And then they'll
Sure.
make this all caps on this line, just a little bit bigger than the all caps on this line, because this is for like a sound direction, like a
Okay.
bang or a boom or a zoom or something like this, right? So
Yeah.
you can do these things if you want to go back through and kind of
Hmm.
play around with it and create your own
That's
thing. but
cool.
but you can. You don't need some fancy software to write a screenplay. You can.
How many pages do you set for your benchmark then? If you've got your 2 hours, like how do you do it
So
usually?
I dedicate a minimum of 2 hours per project per day,
Mhm.
on a working day, and I have a minimum of 3 projects that I'm working on. So within that framework, if I am trying to get a script out, my goal is 10 pages a day, screenplay pages. I think we've talked about this before, but it comes out to be, 1,000 words or so. Think of a screenplay page, as we've talked about, can vary greatly in the amount of words, just really depending on what you're trying to describe. But getting that 10 pages, some days it's simple because I don't want to say simple, but it's a little easier because there's a conversation that's like 3 or 4 pages of just back
Yeah.
and forth dialogue. So it's like, how are you doing today? Great. Where are you going? Just came
Yeah.
from the farm. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's just this back and forth stuff. So that's great. You love those days because then you feel like you're going to get your 10 and plus, and you're
Yeah.
going to move into something else. Um, and I like to try and stop not just at that 10, but in a place where I too can just get right back into it. Very similar to Rolf, who you brought up
Yep.
earlier, who
Yep.
likes to end his session where things are kind of tidy. Even if it's a cliffhanger you're ending on, what you're going to write the next day. They say it's sort of like in a marriage. What do they say? You should never go to bed angry, right?
Yes.
Never go to bed angry. And you should never leave your script in a place of confusion, I think. If you want
Right.
to have
Right.
a
That's true.
peaceful night, I'm just saying, if you
Sure. Now, is that okay? So, are the 10 pages, um, the 10 pages are total for the 3 or 4 projects that you have going, or is that each?
each.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Okay. Wow.
I could
That's
be.
a good amount of writing, bro. I mean, that's,
It
you know,
is, and it's not attainable always. I mean, it really depends
right.
on where I am or what I'm working on. It could be a television script I'm working on where the whole thing
Right.
is going to be 25 pages, 27 pages, and um, we might I might spend a day on that and knock out one scene. A
Got
lot
it.
of times it's creating something interesting within that framework. Like we talked about, we're going to bring on, we come back from the hiatus, we're going to bring on some television writers to talk about
Yes.
this. And it's their forte is to really work within a space that's already been created and a lot of times created by someone else. And you're stepping into it and you've got to keep this consistency that's already been created for these characters and who they are, and bring up new situations and how they'll react within that situation without breaking the mold that's already been
Yeah.
established for the character. You don't want to
Sure.
lose the audience that's there already. So it's interesting the perspective that they take when working on a project, and how it's a team effort usually, always, and it has to be. Like I said, someone else has usually created it and stepped away, or to an overseen, usually, not really. I don't want to say that. There's some people who are just, they never leave their project. It's like a mom
Right.
and pop store. They
Hmm.
opened it and they run it and they run it every day, and that's the way it is. And so that's awesome, um, if you're able to have that control. So if it's a major
Understandable. How,
success brings that.
sure. Right. Do you find that, and this is I was going to ask you this on one of the other shows. Do you find that when you're building script, because like with a lot of the people that I run into, other writers and that, I've never felt this way when I write, but building the landscape, the actual the environment of the story. Sometimes people get lost in these epic, novel, Lord of the Rings style or whatever. They develop these worlds that are so in depth that they never get to write the character lines. They never get to the point where they're. Have you found yourself doing that on any scripts? Do you find yourself that you're world building too much, or
I have not had that situation. I
good?
think I've always been laser focused on a character and a conflict for that character. It seems like, just
Hmm.
when it's come from me, I should say. When you're brought in to work on somebody else's project, it is what it is. You're just trying to make it better from where it is right now. I honestly, quite honestly, I've never been much of a big fantasy writer. So
Yeah.
creating these other worlds, or even science fiction, is not always been my. Uh, I've not worked in the genre a lot, so not that I don't love it, but it's just not something that I found myself in. And I think that people are able to do that. I think it's amazing. I love that they can
Yeah.
create a world with so much detail. Now, not getting to the next element of the characters, I think that might just come down to discipline as a writer.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
know, being
I
able
think
to
so too.
create that world is awesome, and having that attention to that detail, because the creating the context is what it's all about. You want the audience to feel everything you feel, see everything you see, hear everything you hear, smell everything you smell. So,
Hmm.
uh, being able to have the discipline or the patience to include all of that detail, and I say discipline and patience, but really it's the creativeness is what it comes down to.
Yeah. It is. It is. And the imagination. Yeah. When it comes down to it. Now I just wondered, because I know sometimes when I've read other people's books, if they've lent me the, just as a beta reader, and that some of them are, they almost lose themselves in the surroundings, and that's okay if that's the way that they write. That's brilliant. But there's got, like you were saying, the conflict, the movement of the story, the flow of the story, the characters, the and how you're invested in that world is so important. And it just, sometimes they get distracted by the world building. And I just wondered, I know that I know that
Well,
you don't do that, but
what's great for me in the screenplay world is that I know that the screenplay is just a step in what the world sees.
mhm,
Only a select few get to see the screenplay, and it gets turned into, hopefully, the final project, the movie, the television show, whatever it is that you're trying to create. So
mhm,
some would say the screenplay is your final draft, or your shooting script is just the first draft of the final project. So it's going to change, and there's going to be a lot of influence from a lot of other people. And as Rolf said, it leaves his hands, and then you've got the actor right before.
right,
He thinks it's his final draft until the actors and producers and directors screw it all up. So,
right, right. Well,
and
and
that happens. It changes, and to create that visual world, you plant the seed, but then you've got the director. But even more importantly, you've got a production designer,
mm,
and they're visualizing now those details that you may or may not have even thought
right, right.
of, to take it to that next level. Now, and when people write like that, let me ask you this: do you
Mhm.
feel that the problem is that they have put too much of this in the beginning, and you're like, what is the rule of thumb with a script? I tell everyone, look, if you don't get me in the first 10 pages, then I'm not probably going to finish the script. It's very
Right.
unlikely I will, unless you're a friend and you want notes. But if you're pitching this idea for me to go and make it, if 10 pages in, if I'm not in, I'm probably not going to finish
Right.
it. So,
And that's what David Putnam said, the same thing. He said, I think it was 6 pages. I think that's what he said. Was something along those lines. We can go back and check, but
yeah, yeah.
it was, you've got to be able to grab that attention and then be invested in those characters or the conflicts or whatever within first six. I think he might have said 10 pages, but it was six. I thought he said 6 pages.
It was, yeah, it was less than a screenplay, but it's as many words. That's the thing, again,
Exactly.
word counts are
Exactly.
completely different.
Right. But
So,
I do think that you can get lost. The ones that I've read, it's almost, it's a distraction to, when you have for me, it's a distraction. Doesn't mean for everybody. When you have different, say, like I just use fantasy for an example, but the different worlds, the different names, the different, it's just, it's so, some of them are so far off, to where I'm not invested in it. It's too deep. You know what I mean? And I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just my genre. It's not what I enjoy. And I tend to not read if I know if I know it's going to be like that. I try not. I want to help people, but I'm honest with them and say, listen, this really isn't my forte. Like you were saying about science fiction, which I think you're selling yourself short. But I think that there's definitely it could be very distracting for people that are trying to get this epic out when they don't necessarily need to be writing an epic. Is what I'm getting at.
I
If
think
that
that,
makes
yeah, I think that people develop their ideas differently as well. Like I said, that I develop usually, I'm a character conflict driven kind of person. I go right from mapping that out. I want to understand how that's going to work throughout the show and how it's going to wrap up, right? And most importantly, what's the conclusion to this? How
right.
do we resolve this issue? So I'm always looking at that. And I know also, though, like I think of a movie like Avatar, and just saw now that there are 4 sequels planned, and the first
Yeah,
one is just getting underway now, finally, years and years and years and years and
that's
years later.
something. Wow, wow.
But I know that was created based on the idea of a place, a land, a world.
Hmm.
Not the story wasn't there was no story. Then he's created the story around this land. So
Yep.
there you go. There's someone creating this whole other world. And it makes me wonder, what about Lord of the Rings? When Tolkien was writing this, was it how what came first? The characters or the land, the world, the
The surroundings. Yeah, yeah. And and to his benefit then and to what I just said, there's you're making I mean you're becoming the staple. You are the again back to template. You are the template now for every fantasy
yeah.
fellowship or anything ever conceived from this point on. What a feat in itself. But yeah, that's got to be. I mean, Tolkien was such an anomaly. It's amazing uh, what uh, what he accomplished, but just amazing. But
Yeah. Set the bar high.
I guess
Yeah.
go for it, go for it. But I'm sure they all thought he was a little nuts too. But hey,
I'll tell you what, when I was watching Peter Jackson movies in
yeah,
the very early 90s, late 1980s,
yeah,
never would have dreamed that he would go on
to
to
such a
direct
yeah.
Lord of the Rings.
Isn't that something?
His films were something. I don't know if you've seen any of his
No,
first films
I don't
from
think I have.
Australia.
Hmm.
Okay, you look him up, folks. I don't want to butcher any of the names right now. It's been a minute since I've seen them, but there was one about these clowns, and it was like killer clowns from outer space, but not.
Really,
Yeah, and it was his own kind of crazy take on
that's cool.
the idea.
Well, it goes to show
So,
you. Hey, go for it. I guess go
yeah.
for it. A lot of different paths, a lot of different journeys. I mean, that's
So we've gotten everybody writing. I'm hoping writing
yeah,
their 2 hours a day and setting a goal for themselves. I would recommend just trying at this point, if you're writing a screenplay, see if you can do 5 pages in those 2 hours. Think about that: 2.5 pages an hour. All right,
hmm
what is that? Give yourself 17 and a half minutes to write 1 page.
yeah.
you can
That's
you can
they
do
can.
it.
I think they can do that. Yeah,
You can do that. You can do that. You can do that. Think about that. In 5 days, 25 freaking pages. Your script is a quarter of the way finished. Your first
yeah,
draft.
yeah,
If you're working on that novel or that short story, yeah, I'd say try and do two pages a day right now. If you could do that's a
yeah,
page an hour.
yep. And
Page an
that's
hour.
achievable. That's achievable.
Yeah, it's like
Com-
four to 500 words a page.
hmm
And that's easy. Think about that. You break a paragraph down, that's about 100 words, right? It's a few
Right,
paragraphs and you got yourself a page. So
right. And by the
I think
time that we come back from a hiatus, there's gonna be a lot of books and a lot of scripts written by people if they do that little simple act every day. Very
so.
simple.
We'll be back on January the what is it, the 14th.
Yep.
January 14th. So that's several weeks from now. Everyone should be, wow, really? We should have some first drafts.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That's going to be great. I look forward to that. And so we can talk about then what you can do with your first draft, how to protect your ideas,
very important,
where you can register your script, and if you should, and there's a handful of different things you can do to protect yourself and protect your idea, your intellectual property,
which you do have to do. You got to be very, you got to be careful, but enjoy it too, and tell everybody else how to do it.
You've got to be able to share it with others, or what's the use?
Exactly.
Right? Why are you doing it? Right? Why are you creating this? You want to share it with the world, everyone you can.
Right.
So
absolutely. Cool. So
all
that
right.
2021, man, it was a good year. A lot of lessons learned. A lot of good things happened.
COVID part 2 is happening
Yep.
here, and I think everywhere else in the world. Not sure.
Michigan too. Michigan too. Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that's it's an optimum time to write, to get your stories out. You don't know.
So send us your questions at Hollywood Trenches on Instagram. Get us on Facebook at From the Trenches of Hollywood. Give us some updates. Let us know what's happening with you. And we're going to be back in a few weeks with a whole new slew of shows and guests, and going to help you get through that final draft. Tell you what to do with it once you get it done. Well, depends on how good it is. Then I'll tell you what to do with it. No. So I don't mean to be rude, but why not? It's the season, isn't it?
Sometimes. Sometimes.
And you can see I'm in another different place again.
Right.
Still construction going on all around me, and the storm today's not helped. But when we come back, I should be together again with real walls. I mean, I see unfinished drywall over here, and yeah, it's a bit of a mess. So
it's cool, man.
We'll get it done.
And you're doing it, and you're still doing it right in the middle of all of it. So that's great. That's awesome.
Got it.
There you go. Yeah,
got to keep at it.
Everybody have a safe holiday, and say it now. Happy New Year. Good health, everybody. You too.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy New Year. Happy day. Happy everything. Right. Whatever it is, enjoy the next couple of weeks. Stay safe. Stay dry. Stay warm. And we'll see you when we get back. Have a great holiday. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yep. I got to write. See you.
Northern Grounds Coffee. Fresh, artisan roasted, small batch coffee with pop culture flavors. The finest organic suspension ever devised.